Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello, nerds! How are you? I'm doing so good. Today, we are going through a list of my 8 most unpopular thoughts about life. This concept was inspired by one of my mentors called Simone Grace Seol. This woman has changed my life. She has a podcast called I Am Your Korean Mom. So you can go listen to it if you are an entrepreneur or a creative person. She's going to help you market your work joyfully. That's what she writes. Market joyfully and with your full humanity intact. She's the number one person that has taught me that it's safe to be myself as I lead my business. Not only is it safe, but it is the most sustainable way to move forward. Because if you try to be someone else as you market your business, your art practice, your freelancing career, then you're just going to burn out trying to fit into a box that doesn't feel natural. So go listen to her or sign up to her newsletter. I've hired her. She's had a massive impact on feeling at home within my professional life. So she created a list of her 10 most unpopular opinions about business, and that inspired today's podcast episode. Actually, if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen a post. I created a post about this a few weeks ago, and now I just want to take this and dig deeper into each point. So let's get started with number one. Number one, I think too much comfort is killing your inner flame. Nowadays, it's so easy to just get a job, do what you have to do, receive your paycheck, go home every night, watch TV, do it again every day, 5 days a week, and never, ever challenge yourself. Like back in the days, we were forced to grow because we had to get outside of the cave, go find our food, figure out how to survive. But now, survival is most often taken care of for those of us living in the West who are privileged enough to listen to podcasts, who have the free time to listen to podcasts. Like the base levels of the Maslow pyramid of needs are ticked, the boxes are ticked, and we're at the level of self-actualization, but nothing forces us to pursue growth unless we actively do. Think about this. If you were alone in a room with 3 books on topics that you're curious about, maybe it's investment, financial investment. If you were alone in the room with those books, you would for sure read them and learn a lot. But if you were in the same room with those books and you also had your phone in there with you, you'd be more likely to scroll Instagram, to watch Netflix, to chat with your friends, and to stagnate. Because reading the books requires more effort, and we are wired to conserve energy and do as little effort as possible, unless we decide to value otherwise, unless we decide to actively step away from comfort in order to grow. Deep satisfaction doesn't come from seeking quick pleasures like the hit of dopamine you get when you're scrolling Instagram, but it comes from challenging yourself and seeing what you are capable of when you do something you're not used to. So if you've been feeling bored and disenchanted and jaded, it's probably because you're too comfortable, because you haven't challenged yourself in a while. So how can you put yourself in a situation where you will have to expand? You will have to uncover new parts of you. Sure, it's not always going to be fun. It will be painful because you'll be a beginner, because you'll be shitty at first. But if you can overcome that and be kind to yourself as you fail and you learn, and you fail again and you learn again, you'll start feeling so much more alive. Your inner flame is gonna come back to life. So say it with me. I am someone who chooses courage over comfort. I am someone who chooses courage over comfort. Let's move to number 2. Your ignored calling is what makes you feel stuck. Now I want to give a shout out to Erin, my previous client, who came up with this expression, your ignored calling. I thought it was genius. So you think you don't know what to do next in your life, and that makes you feel overwhelmed because you're trying to figure out what the right answer is. But the truth is that you do know what to do next. You're just afraid to trust that what you're being drawn towards in the moment is enough. You're worried that what you're feeling called towards is impossible or unrealistic or inconvenient, and you're looking for like the quote unquote right answer that's going to make all the uncertainty disappear. The quote unquote right answer that's gonna feel like a revelation, like a hallelujah, that's going to assure a secure future, secure, happy, fulfilled future for yourself. But that's coming from your ego, and the sense of safety that you're looking for in an external answer, like a perfect life plan, is just going to be an illusion. Real security happens on the inside when you trust yourself enough to be okay with just knowing what the next step is. Just knowing what you're feeling called towards right now and trusting that that is enough and following that and trusting that you will receive your next mission in due time. Do you understand what I mean? When you're so attached to wanting like a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, it's often because you don't trust yourself. You don't trust yourself to figure it out as you go. You're wanting to control, to micromanage the universe. But this is kind of like planning all of your meals ahead of time when you're going to do a 6-month through hike. You might decide, okay, well, in month 4, I'm going to be eating couscous with tuna. And then when you get there, you receive like couscous with tuna in your boxes. What are they called again? Your resupply boxes. I'm losing the through hiker vocabulary. So you receive your resupply boxes 4 months in with the couscous and the tuna, and it makes you want to puke because it's just not aligned with what you want and need right now. It's the same thing when you're trying to plan your life so rigidly ahead of time. It's just a lack of trust, and you can figure it out when you get there. So what I want to truly encourage you to do is just focus on what Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic calls the crumbs of curiosity. Just follow the next crumb of curiosity. What are you feeling called to do right now? And of course, your limiting beliefs are going to rise to the surface. They're going to say things like, oh, but I can't do this. Let's say you're feeling called to writing a book. Oh, but I can't do this because like I'm not that good of a writer. Everyone's going to think I'm delusional. Like, who am I anyway to write about this topic? As long as you don't question these kinds of thoughts, as long as you don't rebel against the status quo and consciously update your belief system to match your soul's purpose, you will run in circles coming up with weak solutions for fulfillment. Stop telling yourself you don't know what to do when actually you do know what to do. Your soul is sending you messages every day about what direction to go in. It's just that you refuse to listen because it's not it doesn't match who you think you should be and the expectations that other people have of you. right? I'm shouting now because every time I have a client who tells me oh, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I have them slow down and I ask them, actually, what if you did know? What if you did know? What would you do? And they always have the answer. They always have the answer. It's just that they've been conditioned not to trust the answers within them. You have the answers within you, as cheesy as this sounds. So ask yourself, what are you feeling called towards right now? And then when your fears show up, try challenging them. When you have the inner critic who says, well, you can't do this, you're not good enough to do that, try to say, really? Are you sure that's true? Are you sure that that's true? Maybe you're wrong. You're willing to consider that you're capable of so much more than you think, that maybe what you're feeling drawn towards is more realistic than you think, that actually it doesn't even matter. You have to obey this soul desire. Otherwise, you're going to keep feeling miserable. That's what I believe. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on so this doesn't last 3 hours. I'm against anything that lasts 3 hours, whether it's a film, an opera, a Joe Rogan podcast. 3 hours is too many hours to spend on one thing. Okay, number 3. Well, wow, this goes hand in hand with what I just said. 5-year plans are a weak replacement for self-trust. I'm just going to be repeating what I just shared, basically. Not only is your attachment to a rigid plan blinding you to opportunities that might enhance the journey in ways you've never imagined, but your attempt to control external outcomes also signals a disconnection from your inner resources. You regain personal power when you lean into the idea that whatever happens, you'll be able to figure it out. I just mixed number 2 and 3 together in a vanilla and chocolate ice cream. So we're ready to move on to number 4. There is no such thing as a right and a wrong choice. I'm really passionate about this. We all, me including, fall into this mistake of trying to find the right answer, not wanting to make the wrong decision. We have a very binary way of looking at our life. If you are constantly hesitating and asking the opinions of your peers about what you should do, who you should date, what decisions you should make, it means you have not made enough decisions for yourself. It means you need to get out there and make more mistakes and learn what works and what doesn't, and learn to listen to your inner compass and see, oh, okay, I made a mistake there, but I remember my little inner voice speaking to me and me ignoring what it had to say. You have to get out there on the field and make mistakes in order to understand how to navigate, right? It's kind of like you cannot learn to drive a car with just the manual. You have to get on the road. And do so in a way that's not going to kill you, but also in a way where you accept the fact that you are going to make mistakes. My first car was full of bumps and scratches, but that was the price to pay to become a better driver. It's the same with decision making. If you want to get better at making decisions for yourself, you need to make a lot of them. And the reason why we get stuck is because we're afraid of how we're going to feel if we make a quote-unquote wrong decision. We don't want to waste our time, but you're already wasting your time right now. So it's going to be much more valuable to waste your time doing something than waste your time doing nothing. At least you will have gathered some data. Also, if you learn to manage your mind and process your emotions, then you're not going to have to avoid challenges anymore. That's what I work on with my clients, so that they're not afraid to experience feelings like disappointment. They don't make disappointment mean something awful about themselves. Disappointment is not attached to their personal worth. It's just a physical sensation. When you're not afraid of disappointment because you know for sure that you're going to have your own back and you're not going to be a bitch to yourself when something doesn't go as planned, then you won't be so afraid to try something unusual. I'm going to give you an example to make sure that this is clear. So, I left my 7-year relationship back in the spring, and now I was for forever asking myself, is this the right or the wrong decision? I was stuck in this cycle of indecision. And eventually I had to realize that there is no such thing as a right or wrong decision. Life is so much more complex than that. It's a right decision in some ways and a wrong decision in other ways. And the reason why I'm asking myself this question is because I'm trying to avoid pain. I'm trying to choose the path where there will be less pain instead of learning how to manage the pain better, instead of getting better at feeling bad. Because there would have been pain if I stayed, and there has been pain in leaving. One of the things I was scared of is feeling regret. What if I leave and I regret it? I know many of you are afraid of regret, but let's look at that. What is regret? It's a momentary feeling, and there's different ways to deal with it. You can decide to spiral with the regret, like we talked about in last week's episode. Be like, oh yeah, that's true. I should have stayed. I would have been so much happier right now if I stayed. But that's just a lie, because you have no idea what it would have been like. So you can spiral with the regret, or you can have compassion for that part of you. Get curious, like why are you feeling regretful? Is it because it's hard for you right now because you feel lonely and you're scared that you're not going to meet someone else? That's understandable. And reassure that part of you that I got you. We are safe. We are going to be okay. Regret is also a sign that you're not trusting your past self. So whenever I want to go towards regret, I remind myself, no, I trust that I made the best decision that I could with the information that I had, and now I am moving forward. Regret is past focused. It's thinking that we would have been happier if we had made a different decision in the past, but there is no way to know that that's true. So might as well take care of that part of us that's just scared, that's just feeling lost, and find a way to make them feel better in the moment. When you have your own back this way, when you know, okay, I might feel regret, but that's okay. I'm going to figure it out. If I feel regret, I am going to be there for myself, and I'm going to find a way forward. I'm not going to abandon my inner child. I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to be grounded and solid and kind. If you think this way, then I guarantee you're not going to be as freaked out about making decisions. Number 5, your lack of time might be linked to a lack of self-respect. If you keep saying that you're super busy, it might be because you unconsciously benefit from having no boundaries and saying yes to everyone. So be honest with yourself about what you gain from that way of being. And most of you might think, oh, I don't gain anything. I'm just so exhausted. No. If you keep doing something, it's because you gain something from it unconsciously. So what do you gain from having such a packed schedule? It's probably along the lines of people's approval. If you say yes to everything, then you never have to disappoint anyone. Everyone's happy with you, except yourself. And actually, that's not even true, because sometimes when you want to give some of your energy to 10 different people, then you have a limited amount, right? So you only give them 10% each, and they can feel it. So if you want more free time, if you want more peace of mind, you're going to have to get comfortable with disappointing some people. Honoring your needs and your desires will ruffle some feathers for sure. There's no getting around that. there's this exercise I give my clients sometimes, and so you can do it in your notebook if this is a problem of yours. What would you do if you were a bad girl? It comes from Kasia Urbaniak's book, Unbound. What would you do if you were a quote-unquote bitch? What would you do if you were like cocky? Make a list. And what's so hilarious to me is when I ask my clients this question, the list that they make is so freaking reasonable. It's a bunch of things that are not bitchy at all, but they seem bitchy because especially as women, we've been conditioned, not just women, but especially those of us socialized as women, we've been taught that we need to be good girls in order to be loved. And so everything that doesn't match good girl behavior feels awful, but it's not. It's like sometimes I ask my dad or like a guy friend what they would do, and they tell me like shamelessly, here's what I would do. And to me, it sounds like so rough, but actually it's just normal way of being, like self-respect. It's basic self-respect. But when you've been so used to stepping over yourself for others, it creates some cognitive dissonance. So we've got to get used to feeling like we're being a bitch until it becomes our new normal. And we realize, actually, I was just standing up for myself because my needs and my desires matter just as much as other people's. Okay, we're ready to move on? Let's move on to number 6. Don't want this thing to be 3 hours, do I? Low energy is often caused by mind drama. Chances are you're not exhausted at the end of your workday because there was too much to do and because your colleagues are annoying, but because you wasted brain juice having opinions about how things should be done, worrying about what others are thinking of you, and trying to micromanage how everyone around you feels. Admit it. We've all done it. It's not about your workday, it's about it's about the inner monologue, the draining inner monologue. Learning to calm your nervous system and to manage your mind in the same circumstances will give you a lot more energy than changing jobs ever could. Unless it's like super toxic environment. What I mean is sometimes we want to escape a job or a relationship because it is forcing us to work on ourselves and we don't want to. But that's just running away from the most important work. So if you're just annoyed with a bunch of things at your work, it's instead of trying to find a job where no one's going to be annoying, then you have to figure out how to show up differently, how to set better boundaries, how to stop blaming and critiquing others for everything, how to be looser in your approach. And that's like easy to say, hard to do. I know. That's why it's helpful to hire a professional, to work with a coach, to work with a therapist. I don't care what you do, but face the truth, please. You can change your circumstances all day long, but that's not how you're going to grow. Like, I find it so much easier to be my best self when I'm single than when I'm in a relationship. Because when we're in a relationship, we are constantly facing conflict because human beings, they're challenging, right? So are we going to try to find a partner with which there is never anything wrong and we always feel good? Or are we going to try to work on ourselves while we're in relationship? And now, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to never break up, never leave jobs. That is not true, obviously, because I have left jobs. I have broken up with people, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes not so much. You can listen to my episode about the decision to break up for more about that. But I think there's a lot to be said for staying and working on yourself for a while until you decide, actually, you know what? I could keep working on myself, but I don't feel like it anymore. That's part of what I told myself. I was like, yeah, I've grown a lot in this relationship and now I'm ready for a different challenge. If you're ready for a different challenge, that's completely fine. Cheers to you. Go on your merry way, but also just make sure you're not escaping. Make sure you do so. You move on consciously. Okay? Number 7. Seeking productivity is an unsustainable way to make yourself feel worthy. Quit forcing yourself into a perfectly curated morning routine and schedule. You're trying to fill a hole in your heart that can only be healed by giving yourself the unconditional love you didn't receive growing up. I've told you about this before if you're a big fan of the podcast. Back when I wanted to perfect my morning routine, it's like, okay, I'm only going to be proud of myself. Only going to be happy with myself if I can wake up at that time and then do 10 minutes of running, 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes. I don't remember what it was. It was very rigid. And it was like, okay, I'll just pat myself on the back when I do it. And if I don't, I'm just going to be frustrated with myself. No, you have to start the day feeling like you are worthy, 100% worthy as you are right now without having to be like a better version of you. Imagine being a parent and your child feeling like they have to prove themselves to you every day in order to get a hug. No, we have to flip that on its head. It's like, oh, I love you so much and I'm going to show you my love no matter what you do. If you go to school and you rock your exams, great. If you go to school and you fail all of your exams, I still love you. I still madly love you. And let's figure out what happened. Let's figure out what was missing. How can I help you? How can I support you? But that's not how most of us have learned to love ourselves. It's like, what? You failed your exams? What's wrong with you? You should be ashamed. We have to reparent ourselves. We have to give ourselves what we did not receive when we were kids. Be kind along the journey when you make mistakes, not just when you reach a destination. That is conditional love. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to give up along the way due to the self-inflicted heaviness, the conditioned heaviness. That's why so many people quit when they start a new project. Like, for example, let's say you want to start a business. So many people quit because they're so mean to themselves when they fail. But that's what growing a business is all about. Trying things out and failing and getting up again and trying something else and failing again. But if every time you fall flat on your face, you make it mean that you're not good enough, that you're never going to be, then of course you're not going to keep going in that direction. That's just like unbearable. But it's not the growing of the business that's unbearable. It's how you relate to yourself. I've had people tell me also that they hate social media because they feel like they have to show up a certain way and they have such high expectations for themselves. Like, oh, I should show up every day. I should look professional. I should speak in a certain way. And then they end up burning out because obviously it was too much pressure. But it's not social media's fault. I'm sorry to say. It's the pressure you put on yourself. And how you don't allow yourself to just be who you are, to just be messy, to just show up however you want to show up, however brings you joy. You're trying to fit into a box of productivity and professionalism. You're shooting yourself instead of being like, let's just have fun with that. Let's just take social media as a tool that we can have fun with and not whip ourselves into the perfect user of social media, okay? These are just a few examples. Moving on to number 8, your high standards are disguising your deepest fears. This also goes hand in hand with what I just shared. You say you don't want to share your piece of art, for example, on Instagram because it's not ready yet. It's not good enough yet. but I call BS on that most of the time. You're probably just afraid of how imperfection will affect other people's perception of you because your personal worth depends on their positive thoughts. Or more accurately, your personal worth depends on your perception of their thoughts. So if you imagine that they have positive thoughts, then you feel good. But if you imagine that they have negative thoughts about you, then you feel bad about you. It all goes back to how you judge yourself. If you have a belief that imperfection is cringe, that if you post, let's say a cheesy poem online, that's something that you should be ashamed of, you're going to be afraid of other people's judgment, but really the number one person's judgment that you're afraid of is yourself. So you have to unshame yourself. You have to rewire your belief system to believe instead that actually is courageous to post a poem online. That's how your people are going to learn about your work. That's how your fans are going to discover you. That's how you're going to get better. And yes, sure, some people are going to think that's cringe. Screw them. We're not doing it for them. They're not the one living your life. If expressing your creativity makes you feel alive, then go do it and screw people who are going to judge you for that. It tells you a lot more about them and the permissions that they don't give themselves than it tells you about you and what you create. Personally, I look up to the person who has published 2-3 bad books so much more than the person who says they've been working on a novel for 10 years. It's so much more noble to me to publish bad work than to stay hidden until you have achieved what you think is perfection. I didn't always think this way. I remember someone I studied with, they published a book, a romance, and I tried reading it and thought it was so bad, and that made me feel so much better about myself because I was like, see, they did this amazing thing, but actually they're not really talented, so, But that was just a way to protect my ego. That was just because I was not giving myself the permission to be a beginner at something that I care about. Now that I do, I am done judging people who are in the arena. Once you truly believe you are worthy no matter what, you will become a prolific creator who shares for the sake of joy and service to the world. I'm going to repeat that. Once you truly believe you are worthy no matter how people react to the work that you create, you will become a prolific creator. Seth Godin talks a lot about that. Go get his book, The Practice. Okay, the point is to become someone who shares for the sake of joy in a playful manner, in service to the world. That is true bravery. And everything else is just insecurity in disguise. So, that's all I have to say for today. This was my rant. I hope this resonates. Please message me. I love to hear your thoughts. What came up for you during this episode in which I did a lot of shouting. And now I'm going to let you go with a big virtual hug, kisses, and I'll talk to you next week, my loves. Okay, bye-bye. If you love what you're hearing on the Self-Growth Nerds podcast and you want individual help finding a new direction for your life and developing the courage to make your dreams a reality, you have to check out how we can work together on selfgrowthnerds.com or message me on Instagram at selfgrowthnerds. My clients say they would have needed that support years ago. So if you're tired of feeling like you're wasting your life, don't wait. Get in touch now, and I cannot wait to meet you.